Woo-hoo! Ain't nothing a little hard work can't do. This 4Runner's back on the road. Yeah! All right. The 4Runner has just gone through its first major surgery. In today's video, we're focusing on the knuckle transplant. That's right, the knuckle transplant. Now, I'm not gonna lie, mistakes were made in this video. I've kept them in and we're gonna talk about them. Well, I can't believe it. Today is finally the day that I attach this steering knuckle back to this 4Runner and attach everything else to it. Finally. Now, I say finally because this all started with this CV axle replacement. And with this replacement, I learned that the bottom two bolts that hold the bottom ball joint to the steering knuckle, these guys right here, were stripped out. And with this hardware store bolt being so stripped out, it also meant the threads this screwed up into were stripped out as well. Now, because those bottom two bolt holes on the factory knuckle were stripped out, I bought a new one. And no, I did not buy this from Toyota. This is aftermarket and it is Dorman. Taking a look at these two knuckles side by side, you can of course see this is the Toyota one and this is the Dorman, and they look very similar. But a few things I noticed here are the thickness of this neck, for example, on the Toyota versus the Dorman. The Dorman actually has a thicker neck here. If I take my calipers on the Toyota unit here, let's measure that, and we're just about 34 millimeters. Now let's go over to the Dorman. And it's actually a little thicker than the Dorman, where we're at about 32 millimeters. However, if we look at the thickness this way, that's about 43. And if we come over to the Toyota, look how much wider that is than the Toyota. Let's cinch this down, and the Toyota is about 34 millimeter. The Toyota unit is slightly thicker this way, but a lot thinner this way. If you look at the Dorman, you can see how much thicker that is back there. What do you guys think? Comment down below. So the knuckle itself doesn't actually attach to this ball joint. It's this bracket here that attaches to the ball joint, and then these two holes are the two bolts that bolt to the bottom of the knuckle. So this is the first piece I'm going to install. Slides up there like that. I'll put the castle nut on the bottom. And with this castle nut, I'm gonna go ahead and torque it down. It's a 24 millimeter socket I have on here. I've got a block of wood up here kind of blocking it off. It's not a very great situation. Okay, there we go. And as always, with a cotter pin and a castle nut, I'm going to tighten that castle nut in order to free up that hole. Let's check that. Almost. There we go. Now my cotter pin can get through that hole. If you remember from the CV axle video, I put this brand new seal in the back of the factory knuckle, and I was able to salvage it. I took it out without damaging it at all, so I'm gonna reinstall it into this new knuckle. I'm gonna put just a touch more grease on the outside of this, just so it helps it to kind of slide in there better. Well, there she is, fully seated all the way around. That's a really easy way to put a seal on when you have the whole knuckle out, of course. Oh yeah. We're gonna have to lift up the lower control arm with the jack in order to get the bolt to come down into the top of the knuckle for the top ball joint. Everything seems like it's gonna work just fine. We have our tie rod end that's gonna go here, our sway bar end link stud that's gonna go right through here, and of course our upper ball joint stud, which is going to go right through here. And I did get two brand new Toyota factory bolts for the bottom of this knuckle. I'm also going to be using blue thread locker on these bolts. Something like that. It's probably way too much. Go big or go home, right? And I'll set this in place and just try to get this thing started here. Okay, there we go. Hand threaded. So this way I know that I can't mess that up. Alrighty, we are not cross-threaded. Of course, I can thread this thing all the way in by hand. I have my 19 millimeter socket here. There's torque right there. There's torque. Nice. Okay, so the knuckle is installed on the bottom only right now. I have these bottom 2 bolts torqued down to factory spec. And of course you saw with this bracket, this castle nut is torqued to spec, and it does have the cotter pin installed. Okay, so the jack is lifting up the lower control arm, which is lifting up the knuckle, and hopefully giving us enough height here to be able to pull this upper control arm down and slide that into the hole. Definitely get the castle nut started. There we go. Well, this is where I make my first mistake. I'm fully tightening that upper ball joint castle nut. Unfortunately, you'll see later on in the video, I'm gonna have to take that back off because I haven't installed the CV axle into the knuckle there. Oh well, this is how we learn. Now where's our hole? Okay, just a smidge more. All right, you can see the hole now for the cotter pin is very easily accessible. Well, here's my bearing and hub assembly that came off the truck, and I'm gonna be reinstalling this thing because, well, it felt really, really good. It didn't make any noise. It's nice and tight. And just judging off the way this thing looks, I'm assuming this has been replaced probably fairly recently. Unless one of you guys knows differently, there are no marks that I can see here to indicate what brand it is. I don't know if this is factory Toyota. I doubt it. But anyhow, it's going back on. Okay, first things up is this backing plate. Here we go. Okay, that one. I think it's horrible access. Probably couldn't be any worse. And I feel like those are cross-threaded because nothing is turning. This was a disaster. Ah! Come out and... Well, believe it or not, it's been 2 days since I was just trying to install this original hub bearing back onto this brand new knuckle. The reason why it's been 2 days is because, well, I realized why this thing wouldn't thread in. And that's because the threads here on these 4 bolts are stripped out. They're rolled over. So they weren't really able to catch the threads on the brand new knuckle. Somebody, whoever worked on this thing last, really over-torqued everything. When you look closely at one of the bolts here, you can see it's not too bad right at the start there, but as you roll it around, you can see those threads are just flat. And that tells me that they simply tightened this way too much. Now here's another one of the bolts, and you can see same thing on this one. This thread and this thread are totally flat all the way around. And yeah, it's not horrible, but the last thing I want to do here is mess up these brand spanking new threads in this brand spanking new knuckle here, all because I wanted to reuse this bearing hub, which I was kind of iffy on anyway. So here's what I did. That's right, I went to Rock Auto and ordered a brand new pair of Moog hubs. Well, the box looks really good. It's not damaged in any way. Here's the side of the box with the part numbers. So let's open it up and see what's inside. Looks like they include another seal. And there is the bearing hub. Let's take it out of the package. So this is a bearing and hub assembly. It looks like they've already applied the red thread locker, and the seal is also pressed on here behind the hub. So let's see if this threads in easy. Mistake number 2. I'm installing the hub assembly without installing that dust shield. Did you catch that? Yeah, I'm gonna have to take that back off. Oh yeah, I can already tell you that it's threading in easy. Got to get it lined up. Yep, that's amazing. Try to show you this one here. Just by hand, threading right in. That's exactly what I want. I'm not going to be over torquing this, and I want everything to thread in nice. Well, before I go any further here, you can see this is just barely threaded in, a few threads there. Before I go any further, I should be installing the dust shield, but no, I'm hyper-focused on getting that CV axle installed. At least I'm figuring that out. I want to make sure I can get I hope I can. I think I can, but I want to make sure I can get my CV axle back through that hub. If not, then I'm gonna have to take all this stuff apart again, and I may have skipped a step or two, but it should be fine. Let's see here. If I just turn this knuckle. Okay, time to fess up to a mistake that I made, and that is that I put the knuckle on and just kind of did things out of order because I cannot get this CV axle back through the splines here, through the hub bearing. It's just not happening. There's just no way. There's not enough movement. This thing doesn't move enough. I could probably do it if I wanted to rip the boot apart, but that's obviously not going to happen. So I think I'm going to continue the install of this hub. I'm going to torque it all down, being that the knuckle here is fully secured. That way I have a lot of leverage so that I can torque these down to the spec they need to be. Then I will remove this castle nut here for the upper ball joint and hopefully be able to swing this knuckle down enough to be able to get the CV axle in. I think that'll work. Everything is snugged up, and I'm going to torque these bolts down. The only thing is how do I get my torque wrench onto these bolts when they're behind this hub? You use a crow's foot. So this is my setup. You can see it's a 3/8 torque wrench. I've got a small 3-inch extension on there and then a crow's foot. Watch how this goes on there. So now the crow's foot is on that bolt, and I have plenty of room to go ahead and torque this thing down. Right there. There we go. There we go. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and check them all. The only thing you need to pay attention to is the orientation of the crow's foot, because if it's off, you'll have your extension contacting the hub here, and you don't want that. And that's it. This driver's side hub assembly is fully torqued and attached to our brand new knuckle. New hub, new knuckle. This is gonna be awesome. Now I will say I haven't been giving torque specs so far in this video, and that's because I want you to do your own research and come to your own conclusions. I haven't found any super definitive torque specs. I'm really just researching forums and Facebook groups, looking for torque specs in those places, which are just coming from essentially word of mouth. But what I am doing is trying to back that up at least 2 or 3 different times in 3 different areas on the internet so that I can come up with a good number. Maybe I can confirm a number or come up with a, hey, these 2 numbers are very, very close, so let's take the average of that. So my point is that my torque spec that I'm using here may not be totally accurate. The torque spec, however, that I did use on these, as far as I could tell, was 59 foot-pounds. Do not quote me on that. That is just what I could come up with. And so therefore, I torqued these to 59 foot-pounds. Now that being said, I found another one that said these go to 100. So I don't know if at one point Toyota had them at 100 and then lowered it down to 59. Maybe they were having problems with threads rolling over like we're seeing here. I don't know. But the one other thing to note for these, you saw they had pre-installed red permanent thread locker on them. That's also what was on the hub that I took off, and that's why it was so unbelievably difficult. Well, that and I was trying to take it off on my workbench instead of taking it off here attached to the vehicle. So that was also making it hard. And now I just have to take this castle nut off this upper ball joint so that I could swing this knuckle back out of the way and try to get my CV axle back through the hub assembly. Well, I finally realized that I shouldn't have torqued that castle nut. Now, having to take it back off, I make another mistake. Watch. I have the puller on. I'm going to apply some pressure and then just hit the knuckle with my hammer. Okay. Okay. Holy moly, man. Did you see that? Wow. I am very thankful that knuckle didn't give me a knuckle sandwich. What I should have done was supported that lower control arm with my jack so the spring didn't have a chance to immediately and forcefully press that thing down, making that knuckle swing out at me. That was not good. Well, that's not the first time something has exploded on this job. Wow. I had no idea that was going to happen, but I guess I should have thought of that, being that the spring was pressing down the lower control arm. And anyway, mistakes have definitely been made on this job. Let's get down to business here. Oh, give me a break. Okay, hold on. Oh, the wood. We are installed. I mean, it's not all the way, but it's pretty much. A CV axle boot wasn't in any danger. I did have to, tweak that thing a lot. The problem is that CV axle boot is very, very stiff. Okay, the sway bar end link is now reinstalled. I'll go ahead and put this nut on. And I'm going to come back to my needle nose locking pliers here to hopefully hold this from spinning. Right on, man. I'm going to try to get torque on this thing. There we go. Well, the cotter pin is going in, which is good. Well, I'm sure a lot of you guys are laughing right now because you saw me attach the hub assembly without the dust shield. That's right here. I just looked over and saw it. I was wondering what looked different here, and what looked different was there was no dust shield behind the hub assembly. Oh man. What can I say? Today is just not my day. I don't know why. I have been making mistake after mistake, a couple of mistakes that you guys didn't see and I don't even want to talk about. Thankfully, these aren't nearly as tight as whoever installed the last set of hub assemblies. After all that, and here I am having to take the hub back out, literally surrounded by tools. You have those days, You win some, you lose some. It's all good though. This is how you learn. This is how I learn. There we go. I am finally in the home stretch. You can see I have the wheel on, it's touching the ground, and I'm able to torque the center CV axle nut, which I just did to 150. However, the torque spec, again, I'm getting two different numbers. One is about 203 and one is 173. So unfortunately, my 1/2-inch torque wrench here only goes to 150 foot-pounds. Yeah, I need to invest in a better torque wrench. At 150, I've already torqued it. I'm just gonna go a little bit farther and just assume the torque spec is about 173. I can check it again later on down the road just to make sure that nothing has loosened up. So being that I'm already at 150 and I just want to go, another 25 foot-pounds, I'm just going to go maybe like a 1/16 of a turn here. Something like that. I think that'll be fine. And the other thing about that is really all I need to do is be able to get this on there as well as this cotter pin, which it looks like I might need to shorten up a little bit. I took about 1/8 inch off the end of each side. There we go. And the cotter pin is now in place. She's finally on the ground, guys. No more jack stands, no more jack, except for the other side, but I still have to drain and refill the front differential. After that, I'm gonna take this thing out on a drive. Yet another mistake, dust cap. Well, I don't know what it is with me lately, but like I've been saying, I have just been making, mistake after mistake. So I forgot to put this cap on to cover the CV axle nut. And so I'm hoping that I can just slide it on with the wheel already on, which it looks like I can. There we go. All right, next up we have this front differential. Now I don't know if this fluid has ever been changed. Of course, these front CV axles were changed, and in that process you do lose some fluid, though when we took mine out, no fluid came out. So I'm curious if this really has ever been changed, if this is just the original fluid, which scares me a little bit because if it is, then these plugs might be really hard to get out. So the first thing I want to do is make sure that I can get out the fill plug before I attempt to remove the drain plug. So the fill plug is up top here, and I'm hoping that this thing cracks loose. Okay, all right. The fluid looks not bad. So now that that fill port is open, I'm gonna try to crack open this drain port, which, please tell me that, yes, okay, gosh. Every time something like that happens, I feel like I just broke a tool or something. Yeah, that looks like nice, clean fluid. I'm happy about that. Well, I've got the drain plug back in, so now I just need to fill it up with new fluid. I'm gonna be using these bags from Valvoline. I used these on the rear differential and absolutely loved them. And actually have half a bag left here from the rear differential. Same exact part number, the bag just looks a little different. So I'm literally just gonna put the end of the nozzle in there, as far in as I can get it, and then just start squeezing this bag in there, trying to not spill any. This is a tough spot, not gonna lie. Second bag. Well, what started as a need to replace CV axle turned into a CV axle, a knuckle, the upper ball joint, and the lower ball joint, along with a brand new hub. Yeah, I'm not gonna say that was easy for me. I mean, it wasn't terribly difficult. This isn't rocket science here. It was just a lot of headaches that I had to work through, like seized ball joints and things like that. Although I kinda sorta love when those things happen because I get to learn. I get to learn a lot. This sort of hands-on experience for me, that's how I learn. That's how I retain this long-term information. And it helps me through other difficulties that I might have in the future. So for this 2005 Toyota 4Runner, this new to me 4Runner with 236,000, now 717 miles. Haven't really driven this thing all that much. I think we're good to go. And on that bombshell, make sure you go to the One Road Garage Instagram account, check that out. And also, if you've watched this far and you're not a subscriber, consider subscribing. I'm Jimmy for One Road, and I will see you in the next one.